All right, staying now with politics and the state Senate. When Democrats took control of the Senate 4 years ago, New York politics changed. See, before that, Republicans had been in control of the state Senate for decades. There was a short stint in 2008 when Democrats were briefly in control, but for the most part, the state Senate was in the hands of Republicans. And at the time, they saw themselves as a check on the Democrats, who've had a tight grip over the state assembly for as long as anyone can remember. But this year, Republicans think they could take back the state Senate. They would need to win 12 seats in November for that to happen. So for more on that, I spoke with State Senator Pam Helming, who chairs the State Senate Republican Campaign Committee in New York. Senator Pam Helming, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Dan. It's great to be with you today.
Thank you. So we are about 5 weeks out from Election Day. Tell me first, how are you feeling in general as you're, managing these races across the state?
Yeah, so, in general, I'm feeling absolutely fantastic about the races. But before we get into the races, I do have to acknowledge I am feeling a little down today after the Bills lost yesterday. I think the Bills played an outstanding game and they should have pulled it off, but still cheering for them. I know they're going to do well overall this season.
Yeah, we can never give up on the Bills in New York because as we know as New Yorkers, the Bills never give up on us. So always good to keep them in mind. So looking at these races, I'm curious about how you look at this from a statewide perspective, because, a race on Long Island is very different from a race in Buffalo, but also you have these kind of overarching themes to politics right now in New York. So as you're running these candidates across the state, what is your overall message to voters? What's your pitch to them as they head to the polls in November?
Dan, as I'm out talking to our candidates, to our incumbents, and also I'm running myself, so I'm going door to door, out meeting a lot of people. And the feeling that I have is this is an extremely exciting time for our party. People out there have gotten to see now we've had one party rule for a number of years in Albany. And I'm sure you've heard the topics that we're hearing about has to do with safe neighborhoods and supporting our law enforcement, not promoting this message of defaming and defunding the police. We're hearing a lot about affordability and cost of living, gas, utility, food costs are skyrocketing, and our families need help and assistance, and they need it now. So I think the energy, the excitement is for the Republicans, whether I'm talking to, soft Democrats, those who aren't registered to a party, Republicans, conservatives, they're ready for change.
So your goal at the end of all of this, at the end of the November election, is to gain a majority in the state Senate, which you lost in the 2018 elections to Democrats, which as you said, have controlled both chambers of the legislature and the governor's office since then. So as you're looking at what you could do starting in January, say you did win a majority, do you have any sense of what you could do to address those issues? I'm sure people are looking for answers from your candidates across the state and want to make sure that if they elect them, that you're going to do the things that you say that you're going to do.
Absolutely. Very good question. So on the first issue, safe neighborhoods and communities, the Republicans, we have a plan in place. You can check it out on our Senate Republican Campaign Committee website. But it involves, as I said, standing up for our law enforcement, not passing bills that are or creating policy that's pro-criminal. And it's also doing more to support mental and behavioral health services, actually doing more on the ground. Doing more preventative outreach services. On affordability and cost of living, we have a tremendous detailed plan, again, that you can view on our website at the Senate Republicans Campaign Committee. It addresses everything from capping state spending to doing more to reduce utility costs. It's all encompassing, talks about providing broad-based tax relief for families and businesses. So I think we have a great message, a strong message. Our candidates are doing a great job delivering that message. And like I said, I'm very, very excited.
Now, I think it's fair to say that Democrats are really pushing two issues at the polls right now, aside from what you've talked about, abortion and guns after the controversial Supreme Court rulings in June. For a voter's perspective, what would Republicans do if you were to regain the majority in January? What would you do in terms of abortion rights and gun control laws? The state has just recently passed some new abortion laws and gun control laws. Would you do anything to roll them back?
So on the firearms legislation, I think we're going to see court cases that will resolve any questions that remain about the unconstitutionality of some of the recent legislation that was passed. I mean, the firearms legislation was just pushed through, and we're seeing the results of, legislation that has so much gray area. And for me personally, the way a law is written, the language that's used, it matters. Right now, there's a lot of question about, for instance, high school shooting sports teams, historical reenactments. Are they allowed to use firearms? Are they not? I've personally reached out to the governor through letters, through phone calls, and said, can you point to where in the law that this is clarified? And they can't. So I think that will be settled out through the court. On the issue of abortion, this is an issue that invokes a lot of passion, regardless of which side of the issue you're on. But the decision by the Supreme Court, it really, in my opinion, changes nothing here in New York State. New York State had law that predated Roe v. Wade. So to me, it's frustrating when I see some of my Senate Democratic colleagues putting these like scary ads up on TV or in the media saying that, this is an issue. I totally disagree with it. It's not. It's scare tactics. It's fear mongering from the Democrats. And most importantly, it's a way for them to avoid the real issues that are impacting individuals, families, and businesses across the state. The issues that we need to address, the affordability, the spike in crime, it's horrendous. And that's the change that our Senate Republican candidates will deliver.
Democrats at the same time will say the same thing about your party using scare tactics when you talk about things like the rise in crime in New York. How do you respond to that?
Dan, look at the facts and look at the figures when it comes to rising crime. Again, I pointed out Rochester. Last year, per capita, the homicides in Rochester exceeded those of Chicago. And this year, it's so sad. They're going to break that record. You know how many families' lives have been destroyed because of these homicides, because of these violent criminal acts? And it's not just Rochester. Look at New York City, where people are running around like crazy people with hatchets, cutting people up, pushing people in front of subway cars. I truly believe in my heart and in my soul that we have created this environment in New York State where we're pro-criminal. Look at the policies that have been enacted by the Democrats. It's just not the changes to bail and discovery. It's the HALT Act, less is more. And they're still pushing, they're not done. They want geriatric parole and so much. The Senate Republicans, we stand for accountability. We want to see more enforcement of our laws. We want people to be held accountable for their actions. And you know what? That includes politicians as well. The corruption is another issue that I hear about when I'm at the doors and that I know my candidates are hearing about as well. It's got to stop. People have to be held accountable for their actions.
Now, there's a lot on your plate with all of these issues, and I imagine your strategy across the state is going to be different, as we said at the start, depending on where you are. So can you tell me where you're focused in terms of these tight races? Usually we see Long Island as a really competitive place in terms of state Senate races. Is that where you're focusing this year, or where are you looking to really pick up some of these seats?
Long Island is definitely one of our focus areas. We are doing extremely well there. We have very, very qualified candidates who, look, as a proud mother and grandmother myself, I have to say being a mother is one of the toughest jobs. We have women who are also mothers, small business owners. We have people who have worked for the NYPD, so this broad-based experience, who are really, they're doing everything they need to do to be successful. They're out raising funding. They are out knocking on doors, meeting with people. And we saw, I think it sent a message when Todd Kaminsky didn't run, when John Brooks was on the fence about running. They know the writing's on the wall. We saw it in the elections last fall in Long Island that people are fed up. And in Long Island, it's really they're fed up with the pro-criminal attitude of so many politicians. And they're also fed up. They're concerned about congestion pricing. They want school choice. And they're concerned about the preservation of their constitutional freedoms.
All right, well, we will be watching to see how it all shakes out in November. State Senator Pam Helming, the chair of the State Senate Republican Campaign Committee, thank you so much.
Thank you, Dan.